really hard to know right now what we should be teaching the next generation to make them successful in the future. Don't you agree? And also, can you agree with me about something else? Just help me out here. Can you agree that I love libraries? I love libraries. Who loves libraries? Yeah. Okay. I love books. I love reading. I love writing. But the truth is, I'm not sure if those are going to be necessary skills in another 50 years. With AI and text-to-speech on our phones, it really raises the question, do we really need reading and writing anymore? 40 years ago, when I was first starting out in my teaching career, in my theater career, one of my colleagues, very wise woman, Ethel Pitts Walker, who was the president of the Black Theater Network and also had been teaching longer than I had been alive, gave a talk and she said, decades from now, it is not clear whether our students are going to need to be able to read and write. But one thing they are going to need is the ability to step into someone else's shoes and see the world from someone else's perspective. Play, imitation, is the way that we learn to understand our world. When I work with my students, I usually tell them, I am not teaching you anything that you don't already know how to do. You already know. Play is a human instinct. The ability to imitate, you watch behavior, you imitate the behavior, and then you analyze the behavior. That is the superpower. Theater is play with superpower. And I'm going to predict, and I hate all the people who love film. I love film too. I'm for the television generation, but maybe 100 years from now, nobody's going to be watching television and film or any other two-dimensional form of storytelling. There will be much more exciting versions of storytelling, and film and television are going to be like a quaint hobby, just like listening to vinyl records is today. But theater will still be around. People in 3 dimensions, live human beings, will still be performing theater in some form or another. I tell my students, I'm not teaching you anything you don't already know how to do, because theater is a human instinct. You just get it kind of embarrassed out of you as you get older. So when you were 5 years old, you were sitting at the dinner table and you were making all kinds of really cool animal noises that you've been hearing. So you're going like, "Bah!" And your dad turned to you and said, you better cut that out if you know what's good for you. And that was the end of all of those animal sounds. And then you were in the 8th grade, which is the most dangerous year in anybody's life. And you were making your way through, trying to survive a really boring grammar lesson by making all the faces you could think of making. So you're like, and an 8th grade girl who was sitting next to you, and 8th grade girls are pretty much the meanest and scariest creatures on the planet, turned to you and said, you look so stupid. And that was the end of all of those character faces that you made. So, what happens next? Well, Aristotle told us the purpose of theater is to entertain and to enlighten. And then my favorite playwright, one of my favorite playwrights, Bertolt Brecht, who was a great philosopher of theater in the 20th century, said a couple of things in the Ein kleines Organen für das Theater. He said that theater, whatever else it was going to do, has to make itself enjoyable. Theater has to be fun. Before it gives a message, before it urges you to do anything, theater has to be fun. It has to be enjoyable, because play is how we learn to appreciate the world. And anybody who learned their alphabet from watching these little puppets on Sesame Street, you know that Brecht, what he was talking about. Again, play is how we learn to understand our world, and theater is play with superpowers. Theater is medicine. Theater is food. Theater is what keeps us healthy. And the World Health Organization did a study just 5 years ago that tells us that engagement with the arts accelerates brain development in 2-year-olds, as early as 2 years old. In the workplace for adults, engagement with the arts contributes a great deal to well-being at the workplace. And then at end of life, the arts also add quality of life for people who are in the last few years of their lives and for their caregivers. So theater is a very, very powerful contributor to health of a community. Economically, theater also builds community wealth. The U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis put out a study a couple of years ago, along with Americans for the Arts, that showed for every $1 spent on the arts, $10 are spent downstream by people who have come to a show and then they go out afterwards, right? How many of you have done that? You go out, you go to a show, and then you go out and get something to eat or whatever. 7.7% of California's economy is in the creative sector, creative economic sector. We are, by the way, the 4th largest economy in the world now. California is the 4th largest economy in the world. We're talking about $260 billion in the arts and 800,000 jobs. And for every 100 jobs in the theater or in the arts, 180 jobs in other economic sectors are supported. So theater does a lot more than just entertain us. And the question is, theater is a superpower. Who should have control over that superpower is one of the big questions. So is theater just a luxury for people who can afford to buy a $60 ticket and sit in a beautiful theater and watch a show? Well, again, Bread and Puppet Theater says theater should be for everybody. Theater should be free, and that's part of what our theater company is committed to. We believe that theater should be made available to everyone, and you would be surprised at how many people in the Coachella Valley have never seen a live professional show. We take professional shows around the Coachella Valley, and people say, "This is the first theater I've ever seen. I never went." I don't think there are very many people who haven't gone to an athletic event, gone to the AccuSure Arena, but a lot of people have never seen live professional theater, and that's one of the things that part of our mission is to let people know how great it is. Now, theater is also, I'm going to talk a little bit about education, having had a career in education. Theater is really powerful for the mental health of children. I want you to think about that, because what we do in theater, if you're in a play, like in a big musical, or if you're in a class, this is what educators call a smaller learning community. We're always trying to build smaller learning communities, because in those, the kids get to know each other, maybe over the course of 2 years, 4 years, sometimes even 12 years, and they're in a really supportive environment where they can take chances and blossom. And for kids in theater itself, they get to experiment with different personalities. Now, who am I? When you're 13, you're trying to figure out, who am I in this world? You get to try on different personalities. You get to experiment with different relationships and different behaviors, ones that you may never have experienced yet. So it's a great laboratory for trying out how to be in the world. It also is a very wonderful place that kids are very supportive of each other in terms of experimenting around gender. And as you might know, boys, well, you may not know this, boys love playing girl roles until about 3rd grade. And typically in a high school theater program, the girls have to play half the boy roles, because by that time there are very few boys in a theater program. So they're experimenting with playing the opposite gender. And a great laboratory for experimenting with traditional roles is in Shakespeare, who we all think is, classic good stuff. 1/5 of Shakespeare's plays involve cross-dressing, people dressing up as the opposite sex for one reason or another, including in the tragedies, not just the comedies, like Portia in Merchant of Venice dresses as a man and pretends to be or goes to court to defend her father. So we get to experiment a lot. And in Shakespeare's London, women were not allowed on the stage. So all of the roles, all the female roles were played by teenage boys. So the character of Rosalind, who's in the play that I'm about to be directing in January, which is As You Like It, or Como Te Gusta, because we're going to be doing a bilingual version of it. Rosalind would have been played by a boy, and then to survive, she gets exiled from the city by her uncle and has to go into the desert or the forest of Arden, where she dresses like a boy. And then she runs into her lover, Orlando, the man who she's madly in love with, and he thinks she's a boy. So she volunteers to teach him, to pretend to be a woman so that she can teach him how to court his beloved. So you would have had a boy playing a girl, playing a boy, playing a girl, which for any actress would be a great set of layers to sink your teeth into. Now, I want to tell you one personal story. I had a little girl when I was first starting out in my career. I didn't know a whole lot about all these wonderful things about theater. I just knew what I knew. I was at Dana Middle School, which is in the LA Harbor District in a pretty economically impacted area in South Los Angeles. And the counseling office put a little 6th grade girl, 11-year-old girl, into my beginning acting class. Now, little Alicia was just up from Zacatecas, Mexico. She literally could not speak a word of English. And I could speak about about 100 words of Spanish. But she told me through a translator that, first of all, that she didn't know what theater was, that she had never seen a live play in her life, and she was really wondering how she got stuck in my class. My heart really went out to her. She was really quiet. She never raised her hand. She never talked to anybody. And I thought, God, this girl must be suffering so much. Every day she just has to sit here, and then she probably rushes home to be in the arms of her family, who can treat her where she can be who she is. My heart was even broken a little bit more when she disappeared for a week, and the counseling office then told me that she had been cutting herself. And what did I know? I was just a young teacher, but I knew that the Bread and Puppet Theater said that theater is medicine. So I put her into a small group of kids that were making a play, and I took the Hispanohablantes aside. There were 3 kids who spoke Spanish, and I said, take care of Alicia like she was your little sister. Well, they decided to cast her as the lead in Caperucita Roja, their Little Red Riding Hood, because she was the smallest one. So there she was, and within about 3 or 4 days, literally, this girl was unbearably loud. And the little wilted flower that I had been feeling so sorry for was bouncing all over my classroom like a little superstar, and I couldn't get her to sit in her seat. She was so social. At that time, I had loved theater all my life, but I had never realized how powerful theater education could be until that experience. And every veteran theater teacher that I know can tell a lot of stories about how theater saved a kid's life. In fact, my best friend in theater, Lee Eisenberg, who's been teaching for 25 years, told me that for her, theater saved her life. She just told me this a couple of weeks ago, that her mom died when she was just a very young teen, and she was a mess, as kid would be. She was totally at risk. And she says, without the theater class that I got to take, I wouldn't be here. So, again, Lee and I have both seen a lot of kids make metaphysical changes, literally metaphysical transformations in a matter of maybe months, maybe weeks, maybe even days. You see kids completely transformed. It's a great place for them to grow. It's a great place for them to try themselves out in the world. I've seen, one of the things that really inspires me is when I watch a girl who never talks in class go up to the top of a tall ladder to hang a lighting instrument and start swearing like a longshoreman. Or to muscle her way in to get her hands onto a power tool, or to figure out creative ways to move a big, heavy piece of scenery across the stage by herself. And also, girls are socially and emotionally, their social and emotional intelligence is pretty advanced, and they make really good directors and stage managers because they can herd cats and control a large group of crazy actors and technicians. So I have seen theater make kids become whole other kinds of human beings. It also, I will say, just the experience of kids together or people together, reimagining their world and then manipulating their environment to try out what the possibilities of this world are, is one of the parts of human nature and human instinct that promises our survival. So play is how we first learn to understand the world, and theater is play with real superpowers. I don't think that is ever, ever going to change. Thank you.